Hey, welcome back to The Outpost. We're here with Russ West, and it's been a journey talking about emotional intelligence. This is probably one of our favorite sequences. We do it with every guest, and it goes back to a Brad Paisley song, Letters to Me. It's the idea that we've gone through a significant journey, and now we're writing a letter back to ourselves saying, the retrospect. What have I learned all these years later? What has changed? What do I have to be grateful for? What worked out? What didn't? Because now, later, so many years later, we understand why. So that's what's up next at The Outpost. So, hey, welcome back. If you haven't tracked with us recently, we've just gone through an amazing series on emotional intelligence. The first was an overview of emotional intelligence. The second was emotional intelligence in men, how we take it into marriage, and how we take it into fatherhood. This is the wrap up with Russ West going into the Brad Paisley question, Letters to Me. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Tim to kick us off.
Yeah, I wanted to reset for those of us that have been in our audience for a while. We've always called this what I wish I could tell my 35-year-old self. And it really came from both Scott and my experience in ministering to men. Is we found that between 35 and 40, men get to the point where the philosophy that they've used isn't working, and they realize it, and they're looking for something new, and they're open to wisdom. But I think as we've gotten to know Peyton, we've learned that there are exceptional cases in our midst that get it much earlier. And so we're going to remove the 35-year-old self. And so instead of calling this what I wish I could tell my 35-year-old self, the first thing I'm going to do is say, Russ, at what age were you receptive to real wisdom? And like, if you could go back and coach yourself, at what age, one, would you have listened to what you had to say? And then what would you say? So maybe tell us what age you would be open to wisdom.
Well, it's funny you use the age 35, because at 34 is when my life changed. As I mentioned in the earlier episode, my former wife came in and said she didn't want to be married anymore. And that started where I started being much more open to advice, because it rocked my world. So that's when I think I became much more receptive to wisdom and from others, and really seeking it out. Like, what happened? Please tell me what happened. I got into counseling for the first time. But, when I look back, I wish the things I started learning at 34, 35, when I started earnestly seeking help, wisdom from others, mentorship, counseling, I wish so much I would have started that as soon as I got out of college, as soon as I started adult. I mean,
in your early 20s.
Yeah, my early 20s is when I wish I would have done that. Yeah, I wish I would have done it, as a teenager and in college maybe. But when I got out in the adult world, and you're just, you're that fear of the unknown is such a big fear. But you also like, I'm going to go out there and conquer the world. Oh yeah, but I don't know how to conquer the world. But but I'm supposed to have that confidence I'm going to conquer the world. I think that's the time to do it. I waited till I was 34 and I waited to a 2x4.
You felt like you were receptive. You would have been like, here, my experience was I went out in the world and released the shackles of people that were holding me back, and my life took off. Yeah. And nobody could tell me that I was wrong and I should do something. I was not listening until
you were in control. You were going to do it your way.
I was winning. And I didn't see anybody out there who was doing it better than me. So it would have been wasted if I'd say, I'm going to go back and talk to my 22-year-old son. It would have been wasted. That guy wouldn't listen to this guy.
I agree with you. I think it would have been much less effective, right? Because, and I got out and did really well quickly, with work. I was in sales, did really well quickly. You get all puffed up thinking, you have what it takes. And then, got married at 24. And then started having my first kid at 27, and things are just going incredible. So to your point, I think it would have been much less effective as far as people, asking their advice when things were going so well for me. But as soon as that happened, and I think it's not a coincidence, that time frame of that mid-30s, that all of a sudden you're able then to go through enough challenges where things don't go well. Things have been going well, but now all of a sudden,
yes.
And then I got the big one where my wife all of a sudden, in my mind, blindsided me. She wouldn't have said it was a blindside. But I did. That then was like, whoa. And also my career, I had switched from the mortgage business to software sales. And I was at 34, so I was about 3 or 4 years into it. And it wasn't going as fast as I thought it should go, right? So I was struggling with that. And I was old enough now to have made some poor financial decisions. So all of a sudden, my marriage wasn't working. My career wasn't as fast as it had gone really fast early in the mortgage business, but then all of a sudden it wasn't going so fast here. And I had now made some financial decisions I was having to reap the consequences for. So I think, to your point, we have to go through some of that. Hey, we're not as smart as we think we are.
Amen.
Because of life lessons. And then now, I probably am more receptive. So I think that 35 age is an interesting, I think probably your point, when we're probably starting to become most receptive. But I sure wish I would have been receptive and seeked it and been more receptive. Amen. And I was fortunate. I had some men pour into me when I was in high school and in college and in my early and mid 20s, but I wasn't really seeking them.
Right.
They really were just like, they knew I needed that help. Even though I didn't know
I wish I had more of those guys in my life.
They knew I needed their help, even though I didn't know I needed their help.
Maybe it's less important in what age, but just what do you wish you could say?
Yeah, I wish I would.
The advice may be the same that you'd give to a 22-year-old or a 35-year-old.
Yeah.
And I do today. When I do have several young men in their 20s, early 20s to mid 20s, and I tell them, how much they're going to believe it till they go through the challenges that they have to go through.
The machine comes for every man. Right?
Yeah, right. They don't know as much as they think they know. I think we've all talked about, us guys in our 60s, the older we get, we realize the less we know. Amen. We believe a lot. We have a lot of opinions, but we realize the less we know.
This was part of our kind of offline conversation as we were starting to sort of reframe this idea. And we were talking about, I brought up this concept of train tracks in the sense that and maybe you can speak into this concept a little bit, is my view on this is it's so much easier to just set the train tracks once in one direction in your early 20s versus trying to the train is already on the tracks at 35. It's barreling down the tracks, probably down a mountain at the same time. And then you're going, oh crap, there's a mountain ahead that the tracks are going to hit, and there hasn't been a tunnel dug yet. Now I got to either redirect the tracks or blow a hole through the mountain. And that's so much harder to do versus just setting the track right in the first place and going, oh, there's going to be some mountains ahead. Let me prepare now and set the track so that it either avoids them or goes through them in the right ways, so that I'm not at 35 going, oh crap, I got to reframe my whole entire world.
There are people that we know that would argue that that's not possible.
Right.
Yeah. Well, you can't do it on your own. You have to have help. I mean, if you think about it, at that age, you're starting your first job. You're most likely marrying, getting married, and buying your first home. You're the three of the biggest decisions in your life. You're doing that without any help,
practically a child,
without any
wisdom. Sure you know what you're doing. Shut up and listen to me.
Right. Oh, and then don't talk about having your first kid.
Right.
I think the thing that's interesting is that I think it's very hard to set a 30-year track. I think one of the things that we talked about yesterday, and one of the things Russ has talked about with us, is the idea that he was prepared for a journey, and he went on a journey. And there were people in his life that were actually, in lieu of his father, God sent to help him get down to a certain part of the tracks. This was the coach. This was the pastor. Yeah. And I think that, they gave him enough steam and enough energy and enough comfort and enough development so that when he came to the first place where, basically the train stopped, that what now moment, it's having some underpinning so that when the what now moment happens, you can respond. Most adults, when they hit the what now moment, they freeze because their plan has stopped. Their expectations have ceased. They have been shipwrecked, as Russ says. And you bring the train stops here, and now you're like, well, I don't know. The train can't go any further. What do I do? And it's the response. I think what's interesting in Russ's story is his response to who his dad was, in spite of everything his dad did well, his response to how he embraced the pastor and the football coach, his response to how he responded to the men that God sent in his to life. Throughout Russ's sessions, you'll hear him generously refer to mentors and people that leaned into his life. And I think to me, it's how do you take all that and they actually were there to prepare him to respond. When his wife came in at 34 and said, I'm out. Major learning moment.
Learning opportunity.
Major learning.
It's a mountain in front of the track.
It was. But Russ probably wouldn't have asked for that, but he was prepared for that because of what he'd received from other people. And, we don't get that hindsight until we realized, and now I have a beautiful wife. I have 2 beautiful kids. I have in-law. I have a daughter-in-law, son-in-law. I have an amazing marriage and a ministry with my wife who I adore. And you're like, I want to go back. And now that we've gotten here, what are the things that were poured into me that got me here? And what are the things that I now can give myself grace on? What are the things that I can now go, hey, I know it was rough, but look what God did. Look at all the things messy that he made into something beautiful.
One of our friends who's had a catastrophe in his life, he said, what I wouldn't give to go back and have that back.
Right.
But I wouldn't want to go back to the man I was.
Prior to that.
Because we're such different people because of those.
And that's kind of on the point that you were making, which is, and I don't know that I agree with this, but I hear the argument often that says you need a catastrophe. What is Woodall say? Like without pain and suffering, you don't ever let go. And that's been my experience. Sounds like it was your experience. Like it was
and I don't think it's God's design. I don't think it's God's design. Well, I don't think it's God's design to say, I need you to wreck your life so that I can redeem it. I don't think that's his design,
I love what Rick Warren says. He says, God cares much more about our character than our comfort. Right. And so sometimes we have to have a lot of discomfort to have our character.
I think we were talking about this earlier. I think it's the nature of Jacob wrestling with God.
Yes.
It's the nature of just how wildly disobedient the Israel was. No matter what God did for them, they were just wildly disobedient. But
we're no different.
We are no different.
We're no different.
And his disposition to us is, I'm here.
Yeah.
I love you. So when you go back
now to the wisdom. Now after all that prep, let's hear the wisdom.
We're talking too much.
I'm like, what is it? What are the things that you would tell young Russ, either when your wife walked in, even in the chaos of your childhood, even, your dad didn't have your back. It was hard because he was in his own struggles. So at 61, what do you go back and say to young Russ at that time?
And give us some context around what your life looked like in that season.
Yeah. So, and this is, my whole life changed then for the good. It was the most painful, God may have needed to know I needed to go through that to change, right? To be who he wanted me to be. But when my wife came in and said she didn't want to be married anymore, I was crushed. It meant I was a failure, a failure as a father, a failure as a husband, a failure to God in my mind. I was a failure in all of these things. And that was my biggest fear, of being a failure, being like the worst parts of my father. And so what it did is, 2 things, just faith and emotional intelligence. I didn't know what emotional intelligence was at this time, but through the grace of God, I got into counseling for the first time. And at that time, my age and that time, you're talking about the late 90s, a 34-year-old would not think about going to counseling.
Right.
Right. At that time. Thank goodness today that has changed a good bit.
We're cocksure.
Yeah, that's right.
34.
Convincing me I need help.
Exactly. So if I go to counseling, then really something's wrong with me, which I don't want anybody telling me something's wrong with me, right? But I was just so broken that I went to him, and that, he taught me how emotional intelligence was the real issue. With the challenge. If you look at those 3 big things I talked about, my marriage was crumbling. Well, the issues were my low emotional intelligence. things weren't going as well in work. I'd even changed industries. And really, if I look back, I learned from him, really, I changed industries because of my low emotional intelligence.
Right.
And then you look at any of the bad financial decisions I'd made and was starting to reap consequences for was because of emotional intelligence, low emotional intelligence. So he started helping me understand this, my counselor. And he was a big faith person. He's a pastor, actually. So, faith was a part of it as well. But it wasn't just the faith. You had to have the emotional intelligence with the faith. That was the key, right? And as I started learning this, so if I could go back to, I wish as early as possible. I mean, whatever age you want to put on it. I mean, obviously, for me, a minimum the early 20s, but I would even go back to younger. I wish I learned how important, I'd always learned early on. My mother made sure I understood the importance of faith. And I got to watch it, not just her teach, but she modeled it, right? And so faith was important to me, but what I was missing was the emotional intelligence piece of it. And so my counselor was helping me with both of those and how to integrate them. And I wish if I could go back and tell my younger person, I wish it would be as young as I could. Hopefully, like you said, the younger we go, the less probably effective it's going to be.
Yeah.
But at least it could be planted in seeds in those times.
Right.
Is make faith and emotional intelligence a priority, right? And then those two things, if I could just say, make those the top priority, be intentional with them. And then there's so many things we need to do to work on both of those. I even look at them together. I integrate them. I don't look at them as faith or this. I look at them as my faith is going to be much stronger that they're integrated together. I can't really do well with my faith if I'm not highly emotionally intelligent.
So if you had gone back, you're saying coincidentally that you wish you had, been able to tell this to your 34-year-old self, and maybe it was even your 33-year-old self, so that you had a little ramp time before she comes in to either.
I wish I could
avoid
have
it
told
and
this
change
to
it.
right when I got out of college and I was looking for my first job.
Yeah.
I wish I would have known. And here's a perfect example. I turned down 2 incredible job offers coming out of college. One was in Charlotte, North Carolina, but I wanted to come home to Atlanta to work. Didn't understand why, but I just had this incredibly subconscious need. I didn't realize it was low emotional intelligence. And then I had a chance to go work for Coca-Cola in their sales as a salesperson, but they put you through I forget how long, training program. And then they would put you anywhere in the U.S. Could be in North Dakota.
It's like being
Arizona,
in the military.
Right. And so I'm like, oh no, I've got to be in Atlanta because that's where mama is and my high school buddies are. That's low emotional intelligence. So coming out of college, I wish I would have had someone tell me, look, Russ, emotional intelligence is going to be the key here. Not just your skill set, your college education, your work ethic. I wish right then someone was helping me understand how my emotional intelligence was going to impact my job selection for my first job. Then obviously dating, marriage, parenting, those early days, I did all of that. I was my first job at 22, married at 24, first kid at 27. First home at 23, bought my first home at 23.
Wow.
And that was a mistake. People thought I was the best guy. What an impressive young man. He bought his first house at 23. Guess what? I put so much money into that junk and then I sold it 4 years later for what I bought it for. It was not a wise decision, but it was impressive.
Yeah.
Right? It was impressive. It made me look good to people at 23 years old, but it was not a wise decision.
There's some wisdom there.
So my question, with that is, if you had learned it right out of college in your early 20s, how do you feel like the trajectory of your train tracks, like we talked about a second ago, would have been different?
I think it would have, what I would say, I would have made more logical, less emotional decisions, which would have been wiser decisions, right? Doesn't mean I would not have made bad decisions because, I probably still would have bought the house, right? I mean, because I needed so bad to be impressive to everybody. So maybe I would have still done it. But, the earlier we will reach out for help from mentors, from counselors, from life coaches, the earlier we reach out, getting in a group of young men, of like-minded men, getting an accountability partner, the earlier we reach out to this, the better chance we have for making, I say, more logical, less emotional, or wiser decisions.
So it's almost like you wish you had, because our understanding is you had some of those coaches and pastors who were there, who were wise sages in your life in your early 20s, But it sounds to me like you wish you had been more curious.
I wish I would have,
and taking them out to lunch and saying, hey, can this be a once a month thing where we sit down and maybe I just bring you, hey, here's like the top 3 things the last month that I've been struggling with. Help me, figure out how to deal with these. So it's really like I'm hearing sort of you wish you'd been more curious.
I wish I would have been more curious. I wish I would have been more intentional to seek other people's advice. I didn't go ask them for advice. They would give it to me. Give you a great example. My high school football coach. I love this example. So he knew my situation. I didn't realize this. So anyway, I ended up at Davidson College playing college football. I never heard of Davidson College when the first time they came knocking on the door. My college coach my high school coach, he was a history teacher and I was in a different class. All of a sudden someone knocked on the door. The teacher goes to the door and it's my high school football coach. He goes, hey, I need Russ for a minute. I come out and he goes, because back then recruiting, you didn't have what you have today, right? All the college recruiters had to go to the high school football coach and say, hey, is your guy, is he good enough to play for us? And so my high school coach goes, I want you to come talk to the Davidson College football coach. I'm like, Davidson College? I've never heard of him, coach. He goes, yes, sir. So you never questioned your coaches, right? Back then.
Back then.
Right? Back then you could. So I went and talked to the coach. I went, I did the weird thing is the only people recruiting me were Davidson, Duke, Vanderbilt, the Ivy League schools. And later I found out, this is way later, like after I graduated from college, that my high school football coach, he knew my situation, knew that we were very poor, right? And he knew that I was good academically. So he wanted to make sure, he knew I wasn't going to play pro football. That's what I wanted to do. He knew I wasn't going to play pro football, but I was good enough to play college. And so he's like, he made a decision. He would only when coaches would come, he would only let me talk to coaches from great academic schools. Because he wanted me to get the best education, free education I could get.
What a gift.
Had no idea till I got out of college. But when I look back on it, I'm thinking, wait a minute, the only people that I ever talked to that ever recruited me were the high academic schools. And it was because he knew I wasn't going to play pro football. So I wasn't seeking his wisdom. And believe me, I would have still, if I knew that was what was going on, I would have still tried to go talk to the other schools, right? And college was a drag. I mean, Davidson was so hard academically, and I was playing football. All my friends were at Georgia and Auburn and Clemson having fun. I was having no fun. But guess what? He knew that's what I needed to prepare me for life. And so there's an example. I wasn't seeking wisdom, but God gave me wisdom and protection from my high school football coach. So I wish that I wasn't seeking wisdom in my early 20s or my mid 20s, or I went until 34 that I really was seeking it. And that was because I got a 2x4 from God.
So one of the things that's interesting, and I would encourage everyone to go back and listen to the other sessions with Russ. One of the things that's interesting is at some point, as you reflect from now back then, at some point you had to shift away from everything your childhood taught you, your father's situation. You just said you were poor. At some situation, you had to shift away from all of that to say things are going to be different. I'm going to be different, or I can be different. When do you feel that shift occurred?
Wow.
Because you're a free man.
Yeah.
When you
free of the stuff he learned as a kid, you're
clearly like you think about, I was poor, my father, my mom was great faith. God sent these other men to kind of help you, unbeknownst to you probably, with this great story.
For sure, yeah.
What a great provider. Yep. Talk about a miracle. This guy's an angel. Yeah. But at some point, when you had to shed all of those last histories, you always have talked about the subconscious is always recording. But at some point, to move forward, you had to shift out of those things. What did that look like? Was it a time where...
So when I started shifts, I think of two shifts when I listened to you, Scott. So there was this, in high school, there was a shift in me that, and I don't know how young I was in high school, that if I would just go work really hard and do good and be good, right? Yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, keep my nose clean, stay out of trouble, and work hard. That was in my mind what was going to change my life, right? I was going to change my life through work ethic and trying to be a good person through performance, right? And that really helped me in academics, in school, in football, wrestling, and sports. And then when I got into my first jobs in sales, you know, because it really, all of that worked. But what was missing was the emotional intelligence. And then all of a sudden at 34, the career's not going as well as it was earlier. Financial decisions, I made some not the best financial decisions, and my marriage was crumbling. So all of a sudden that work ethic and performance thing was not working. I thought that's what's going to be my life.
Very typical of what we've seen.
Yeah, that's going to be my life. If I just work hard and be a good person, everything's going to be great. Well, all of a sudden, I had been doing these now 34 for since I was 14 years old. So I've been doing it for 20 years, and then all of a sudden it quit working or wasn't working as.
What's funny is most people at least once or twice would just double down.
Yeah,
and you didn't.
Yeah. Well, and
there's wisdom there too, though.
Well, I say the grace of God got me to this incredible counselor. And then I started learning, because I'll never forget the first session with him. I was like, please tell me what happened. Please tell me what happened. I needed to be a great husband. What happened? And so it took him a few sessions, weeks to, understand my story. He talked to at the time, my former wife was with me. She was in there, telling him all the things she didn't like about our marriage and didn't like about me. And so he started asking me about my whole life, and her whole life. And then he pulls me aside and he says, Russ, you got a lot of work to do. And as I said in an earlier episode, he goes, I can't promise you if you do this work that you'll stay married, but I promise if you don't, you won't have a relationship with your children. They were 2 and 6 at the time, with your children when they're teenagers and adults. And that my mind shift, that was the mind shift.
That did it.
That was the mind shift. And I'm like, I'm all in. He goes, Russ, it's going to be painful because we're going to have to do a lot of removing scar tissue. He goes, it's going to be painful, bloody, and messy.
Excavation.
But you're going to feel it's going to be so much better for you long term. And
this sounds like another angel. There's a book here.
Right.
God sent me angels.
Tim, when I tell my life story, I always say God is a God of miracles. And because all through my life, He's done miracles through my life.
God sent
people that He's put in my life.
God sent you sages.
Yeah,
He sent you sages.
And I've been with this counselor now this October continuously. Now I do quarterly with him 28 years. He's my life coach. I call him my life coach, but he's a counselor. This October will be 28 years continuously. I've been with him.
So much. Wow. I'm thinking about what you just said on the lens of the sessions we've done together. And I really want to ask about all the things you did to have a flourishing marriage with your wife. But I really want to ask that because clearly the man has flourished. And then I made some decisions in my new marriage. It has flourished. And then you made some decisions with your kids. But I want to go there because I think one of the things we've always talked about is as we get older and understand what we're carrying and what we've carried. Mm-hmm. We've always been constantly measuring. Tim, we always talk about, gosh, I hope I haven't passed that on to my son and daughter. Gosh, I haven't passed that on to him. What are in that shift spirit, what are the things you've kind of been super purposeful with your son and daughter on, I'm going to make sure they get this from me?
Scott, I can't believe I hadn't thought about this till right now. This letter to me that you're talking about from Brad Paisley, I wrote it to both of my kids when they were 22 years old.
On their 22nd birthday kind of thing?
When they kind of just happened to be. When Austin graduated from college, our son graduated from college. Basically, I gave him what I wish I knew at his age.
Oh my goodness.
I didn't think about that.
Can you get a hold of that? I want to see that.
I'll send it to you.
I want to see
and
that.
I kind of went through all the different areas of life,
stuff.
From faith to finances to dating to marriage to parenting to health. I mean, I went through all the different kind of areas of life. And I said, if I was your age, this is what I wish I knew. I never thought about that till right now.
Can you pick out like if there was a top 1 or 2, what would?
Well, yeah, I've already said them.
Yeah,
the top two is faith and emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I mean those are the top 2, and those are big terms.
Mm-hmm.
then you double click down on, I put down under, here's what I would do to work on my faith. If I was your age, this is what I would be doing.
What were those things?
It was, starting every morning with prayer time. And I call it conversation with God. I love to just talk to God.
Sure.
Right. And so, and then read the scriptures every day. Right. And then get into, of course, a great church, but also be in a great group of men, find men. Right. And then, of course, I went through the mentors. I've always told the kids, and y'all have heard this, I didn't know this when I was their age, but I've been telling them, always have a mentor, always be mentoring someone. I said, even at their age, there's kids, there's some kids 5 years younger than you that you can be helping, and then always have a horizontal relationship with an accountability partner. So get mentored, mentor someone else, have an accountability partner.
I try to live
So I put that all in there. I put that all in there is, when you go back to emotional intelligence, I told them on counseling, I said, look, there's things you're going to take from my parenting and your mom's parenting, your stepmom, your stepdad. There's so many great things you can take, but there's so many things that are not good from us. They're going to impact. I said, and I told him, your subconscious is going to drive your life. Go learn as much as you can about your subconscious, which is emotional intelligence.
And so that's great. You laid out the information in a literal letter to him. Was he receptive to it?
Yes, absolutely.
How have you seen that
change
and affect his trajectory?
I've seen him do some of them, and I've seen him not do some of them. I've seen our daughter do some of them, and I've seen, which is normal. There's no way they can do all of them. They've got to go on and
do their thing.
And I'll never forget Austin when he was in his 20s, and he was doing, at that point, when he got in his 20s, I was trying to not say, you do this, you should do this, you need to do that, right? So when I would be really concerned about something, I would come to him and say, hey, son, I'm concerned about this. I know that you're very capable of making good decisions, but this is something that I'm really struggling with. Can we talk about it? And,
what if fathers did that?
I know. Like,
let me write that down.
Like, open the door and say, here's freedom.
Here's freedom. But even come at, like what you said, not come at it from don't do that. Because a 22-year-old is going, because like what you said, what in the episode about fatherhood, kids are not looking for advice. They're actually looking for approval. And I think you said it, and we meant to really hang on that for a minute, and we didn't. But I think to that point is you didn't go to your son and say, I did that. Here's how I screwed up my life. Don't do that. I'm going to put up these blocks so that you don't. You said, hey, in the tone of a sage and the thought process of a sage, hey, I did that. I crossed that bridge. It sucked. Here's how it affected my life. Take that as you will. What if fathers did that on a consistent basis?
You'll love this. Scott and I've said this every mentoring group. It's like 80% of what we're going to tell you are things we did wrong.
Exactly.
Well, it is not. Let me show you how smart I am.
Here was the thing. I love Andy's question, Andy Stanley's book, the best question, when he says, based on my past experience, my current circumstances, and my future hopes and dreams, what's the wise thing to do? So this is kind of funny. So what the context was, our son, who's a doctor, right? And at this point in time, he was in residency. So he's, 18, 22, 26. He's late 20s, right? And he's big rugby players. He played rugby in high school, rugby in college. He did his first 2 years of rugby in Australia, played on the rugby team there.
Wow, cool.
Wow.
So now he's playing on a men's team in New Orleans as he's in residency. And I don't know if you know, but rugby is a pretty tough sport.
It's rough,
right? Yeah. And so, I had fallen in love with the sport, following him along the line, right? So I love the sport, but I said, son, can we just have this? I know you can make great decisions. I'm not trying to tell you what to do. You know that. I don't want to ever do that to you. I said, but man, it scares me to death. You playing rugby, and you've got you've invested so much of your life into your being a doctor. Here you are in residency. And I mean, every day, every practice or game, somebody's getting a serious injury. And I'm like, isn't it time to quit playing Russian roulette maybe? And, and he goes, Dad, I hear you loud and clear. And I totally understand where you come from. He goes, but sometimes you got to just let me make the decisions, even though they're not the wisest decisions. And I said,
freedom.
Amen. I said, amen, Austin. I'm so proud. I if I was in your
Freedom.
boat, I probably would still play in too. So I get where you're coming from.
Freedom.
It's funny. I just connected a dot. I had the same, and I was playing soccer at 41. Yeah. Remember, everything happened for me at 41. Yeah. I was on the golf range hitting golf balls, and my knees hurt so bad I thought I was going to have to give up golf. Yeah. Time to give up soccer.
Yeah, exactly.
Another thing that happened to me at 41, like it seems like the stars aligned at 41. I started making good decisions. You don't have to wait till you're 41. Please don't wait till you're 41.
So ironically, a year later, he calls me and he says, "Hey, Dad, I think you're going to be happy." I'm like, "What's that?" He goes, "My rugby career's over." And I was like, "Oh no." Why? And he goes, "Look at your phone." And he texted me his phone, and he had fractured his neck. He had messed his neck up to where it was poking anyway, they had to get in surgery within 48 hours. Oh my gosh. And he's doing great, but his rugby career was over. Right.
But
it didn't hurt his
career,
his doctorate.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Good.
But I listened to the way that you handled even just that rugby situation with your son, and I can't help but see God's love for us and how God interacts with us through the way that you modeled that to your son, and that God gives us free will, and he gives us wisdom in his word and wisdom through sages to go, hey, that's probably not a great idea. Look ahead. There could be a mountain that that didn't just show up in your tracks, but maybe you're literally moving it in front of your tracks. Maybe if you don't do that, maybe if you stop soccer, maybe if you stop rugby, you can prevent that mountain from getting in the way. God does that to us, but he says, but I'm not going to force you to do it. It's your choice. Yeah. And that comes out of the fact that God is love, and free will is really a massive part of love. Of his design, and so it's so cool how you modeled that to your son.
I've not always done it well. I'm sure he would tell you there's plenty
what's
of
his
time.
perspective?
I'm sure there's plenty of time.
Get him on the phone.
Come on, we want to hear from you.
Well, it was funny. Like 2 years ago, we went over to Israel for a wedding during the war. And myself and my daughter and son-in-law and my mother, because it was a long story. But so he was not happy, right? I mean, he's like, "Dad, seriously, you're taking grandma and you're taking my sister and
a war zone.
My dad is going to a war zone. Are you seriously, Dad?" And and so he puts me through the whole process that I had put him through, right? Dad, okay, let's talk about this. Based on your past experience, your current
circumstances. Come on, son, I love it. Go Austin.
Love it. And I said, "Son, I totally understand where you're coming from." And I tried to give him my rationale for it, right? And he goes, "Dad, this is what it's like being parented by you. Just so you know."
One of the things that's really cool.
So we're not always going to make the wise decision, even when we go through the process.
One of the things that's really cool is, isn't it great that when you're looking at the X-ray of his neck, when you were sending pictures from Israel, that you were sending pictures from Israel to your son, isn't it great that when you looked at his neck, you're like, okay, I understand. Yeah. There was no doghouse. Yeah. There was no condemnation.
Right.
There was no "I told you so." Yeah. There was like, "Hey man, I love you. Yeah. Hey, how can I help?" Yeah. And then the other part of it is, as he's looking at pictures of your family moving through Israel at war or while there were attacks, he's like, "This is amazing, Dad." It's not, "Hey, Dad, are you really kidding me? I told you so." Yeah. Hey, whatever. I think that also is God. Yeah. We talked about it earlier today. We had a conversation about Jacob's reward was he was named Israel and then made a king when he wrestled with God.
Because God's economy is different. We talked about that in the debrief episode of Mark. Yeah.
Russ West, we were in high cotton with you. Yes, Thank you so much.
Still are.
It has been such a blessing to talk with you guys. I love what you're doing for young men. I wish I had an outpost to listen to when I was 22, 34.
That's our hope.
And today.
Well, come on.
So I'll be having my son and my son-in-law definitely be making. I'll be saying, "You need to. You should."
Well, this definitely will not be the last time you're in the
It will not. Amen. So I just want to talk if you're a guy out there and anything we've talked about with Russ today or in the previous sessions, I would just ask that you would consider the next right thing to do. Mm-hmm. If something stirred you to reconsider if something stirred you to reconnect, if something stirred you to go a little bit deeper, find someone to share or go deeper on the questions after every episode, I would encourage you to take that step. As a matter of fact, we've never done this before. I'm gonna pray us out on this session because there's so much wisdom from Russ and from what we've talked about that I'm just gonna call on the Holy Spirit to do what he does better than anything we could do, because that's why he's there. So Heavenly Father, thank you so much for Russ. Thank you so much for the wisdom that's been given to him. Thank you so much for the freedom to go and get counsel, to go and seek others. Thank you for the goodness of how you put people in our lives intentionally in your design that are there to give us what we need when we need it. Thank you, Lord, that you ultimately control who comes to the table, who comes to the workout, who comes to the meeting, who comes to our kitchen, and who walks into our lives. Those are all orchestrations from you. And just give us the wisdom, Lord, as we go through this emotional intelligence series, as we start to unpack the questions, just give us the wisdom to hear from you, to hear from others, to make a right move, first towards you, so we can be closer to ourselves, and first towards you so we can be closer to others. We just ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Yeah, and just a real quick push for any of the guys that are listening to this that might be in my stage of life, in your late 20s, mid 20s, or into your 30s and on. One of the things we do here at the Outpost is we want to provide the ability for you to be able to get in direct communication with guys like Russ, with storied sages, as we call them. And so we've got an online community called The Stronghold, and we'll put links to that in the description below. You can also find it at our website at outpostmen.com/brotherhood. You can get in there, and literally we have a chat room in there called Ask Sages, where you can literally put questions around, hey, I'm dealing with stuff in my marriage or my career or fatherhood or whatever it is, and literally get direct feedback from an actual sage in our community. Sometimes sages that you're seeing on the podcast, and other sages who happen to just be in our community of guys. So that's something. If you want to take this the next step, dive a little bit deeper. We put also other discussion questions in there. If you want to sit down with a group of guys, maybe you have a small group or you don't, and you want to create one, we put discussion questions in there. And at the end of the episode, if you want to sit down with guys and talk about this further. So that's something to think about if you're looking for a next step.
Excellent. And there actually will be, in the community that Peyton referenced called The Stronghold, there will be a moment in the future where we will have a live event with Russ. So as you go through the sessions and go through conversations, there'll be an opportunity to person have a conversation with a group of men and Russ, and really personally, profoundly go deeper.
Yes.
That's all today we have for you from the Outpost. God bless.